Hi guys, this is Nathan from Codeuix. Today we'll be looking at how to use Gulp as a build tool for automating our front-end web development tasks. Now let's look at a demo application that we'll be building. So this is a simple front-end application where all the boring repetitive workflows will be automated using Gulp pipelines. Here we'll be using BrowserSync to synchronize our browser, so any changes made to our code will be reflected on the browser in a real time. So once I change my header from Gulp demo to Gulp demo app and save it, the browser sync will automatically detect the changes and reload my browser without me having to reload it. And furthermore, guys, we'll also be looking at how to compile our Sass code to CSS and minify our CSS and JavaScript files for our production. Without further ado, let's start with configuring Gulp for our project. First and foremost, we are required to have Node installed on our system. You can install Node by downloading it from nodejs.org. So you can visit nodejs.org, and the current latest stable version is 12.8.3. I would also recommend you to use Visual Studio Code as it is one of the best code editor available out there for the developers. And now let me open my command prompt, and you can check the node version installed by using the command node-v. As you can see, my current node version is 12.18.3, and I would start with creating an Gulp demo folder. And now let me open this particular project folder and code editor. Let's start with initializing our project. So let me open my terminal by clicking on terminal, new terminal, and here I'll run a command called npm init to initialize my project, and -y flag is sent so that it doesn't give me a prompt to enter any inputs, so I'll keep it as a default. So now a package.json file has been created for me, and now let me install a dev dependencies. So guys, you can see here I'm using -c -dev to install it as an dev dependencies. Here I use Gulp, so it's in basic JavaScript package, and Gulp Sass is for compiling my CSS into CSS. BrowserSync is to like serve an development server for me, and auto prefix is to add an vendor prefix to my CSS. And Gulp CSS is for is to minify my CSS files, and Gulp uglify is for minifying my JavaScript files, and useRef is like it'll take my index.html file as an input, and based on like it'll tell me the types of files linked. And here we have Gulp F, so it is used to determine the type of the file, whether it's a CSS file or a JavaScript file. And Imagemin is used to minify my images. And let me click enter. So guys, this will take some 5 to 10 seconds. So I will pause my video here. So guys, we have installed, we have completed installing all our dev dependencies. So let me create a folder where all our development server related files will be stored under. So the folder would be called source, under which will be having the following file structure. So this is our folder structure, and here we'll create an index.html file. Sorry, it's been replaced. Let me delete this and create an index.html file. And here let's add an HTML boilerplate. And we'll also be linking our CSS and JavaScript files, although we have not still created it. Let's link it. And here we'll be using a relative path. And now we'll also create our SCSS file for styling. It's mean.scss. And I will add some basic stylings as of right now. So there's some basic styling we have added. And under JavaScript, we'll also be adding our JavaScript file main.js. Here I'll just be adding some console log statements. So let me save this and let me close my source folder. And now let's create our configuration file, which is gulpfile.js. So here in gulpfile.js, I will be importing all my dev dependencies. So we have imported all our dev dependencies here. We have imported all our dev dependencies, but you can see that only the BrowserSync we have a method called create. So this will give you an instance that is ready to be used. So now let's start with writing a functions accordingly. So the first function would be to compile our Sass files to CSS. So here, as you can see, we have created a function called Sass, and here Gulp uses an uses a source folder, like it takes in source from main.scss, and it uses a function Sass to compile Sass file to CSS, and the CSS file will be sent to this particular pipe, and here and vendor prefix will be added by auto prefixer, and finally the uh, compiled CSS code with the vendor prefixes will be saved in source under source CSS folder. So now let's create a function to serve the development server using BrowserSync. So here we have created a function called serve, which will serve our development server. So here we are using an inbuilt BrowserSync function called init, which initializes the server. So in the server, we are passing the path of the path of the source. So it will be dot source, and here we are mentioning the port under which the browser under which this particular source file needs to be served, like where it needs to be served. And let's also create a function to watch if there is any changes in our source folder. Based on the if there is any changes, we'll be reloading our browser. So here we have created a function called watch, so which will watch our SCSS file. If there is any changes for our SCSS file, it will call the Sass function, which compiles our SCSS file to CSS, and it will also call a reload function, which is still not written. So this reload function will actually reload our browser. The same thing for this. So here we are using a regular expression where double asterisk sign means it's a folder and a single asterisk means that it's a file. And there is a convenient way where we can specify multiple extensions by by enclosing them within the flower braces and separating them with an comma. And let's create a function to reload our browser sync, to reload our browser with browser sync. So we have created an function called reload, which reloads our browser. And here we are passing a callback function because we need to know when this particular reload has been done. And we should also add another object parameter for browser initialization, that is watch options. So here in the watch option, what this does is we are saying the browser sync to wait wait until the particular function is done, like a Sass file is converted to CSS and CSS is updated to the destination. So wait until that to reload the browser. So that's what we are stating here. And finally, guys, for our development server, we'll be creating a default function to call our gulp. We'll create a default function to call gulp. So we have created an default function where so it should be gulp parallel instead of serious because serial series because we'll be calling all the functions simultaneously, not one after the other. So here we'll be converting the Sass file to CSS, and then we'll be serving our we'll be serving our development server, and then we'll be watching for any changes in the files. So now let me save this and go to my package.json, and here we need to add another object for the vendor prefix to work. So that would be browser list. So this needs to be enclosed within double quotes, and it has a value. It has an array as a value. Here we'll be stating the the browser for which the vendor prefix needs to be added. So we'll use last two versions. So the last two versions are WebKit and MS. So under scripts, let's create a script called start to call our gulp function. So I've saved it. Now let me open my terminal by terminal, new terminal, and here I can call, I can type the command npm start so that the gulp function will be called and it will give me my development server.
So as you can see,
Okay, so there is a, so it's browsers list, guys. It's browsers. So let me save this and clear my terminal and call npm start. So my gulp function is called, and as you can see that, yeah, it gave me my, so my development server has been serving under port 4000. And now let's minimize this and let's go to our source folder. Under source folder, we can see that the CSS file has been created. Once you open CSS, there is a main.css. You can see that the vendor prefix has been added, and I get the CSS, like a converted version of, like my CSS has been converted to CSS. And now let's go to our configuration file to get an production version as well. So the first thing what we will be doing here is we'll be minifying our assets. So in this thing we have image, JavaScript, and CSS as assets. So firstly we'll be minifying our CSS and JavaScript assets. So guys, here we have created a function called asset minify. Here we are sending an input HTML file, and to we'll be using useref to check the type of file extensions available, whether it's CSS or JavaScript. And in Gulp, if we'll check the type of the type of the file. If it is CSS, we'll be calling this function. If it is JavaScript, it will be calling this Uglify to minify the assets. And finally, the minified assets will be stored in mm, dist folder. For this to work, we need to go to our index.html file, and this particular style or the script needs to be enclosed with the following. So here we need to specify build, and the type needs to be the type of the file. So here it is CSS file, and we need to give a space followed by we need to specify the destination folder where this particular file needs to be saved. So it will be under CSS slash main dot css, and this particular needs to be commented out. And at the end, after the script or the link CSS file, we need to close the build. So this is how we the user of detects the type of the file that has been linked. So the same thing will be done for the JavaScript. So build colon type of the file is JavaScript, and where it needs to be saved is under JavaScript folder, and the name of the file needs to be main.js. Let's save it. Sorry, and let's comment it out, and let's end the build by typing end build and commenting it out. Comment it out. So that's been done. So now let's go to our configuration gulp file. Let's add a function to minify our images as well. So guys, we have also created a function called image squash. So what this does is it will minify the any type of image, because here we have not passed the extension. So it will minify any files which is inside images. So basically the file type will be PNG, JPEG, WebP, or etc. So it will minify and it will store all the minified versions of images in this particular destination folder. So let's create a function to build the production level code. So we have also created a function called build, so which will create an dist folder where all our files will be good to go for the production. So here we'll be calling a Sass function to minify, like to convert Sass into CSS, and we'll be minifying the CSS and JavaScript files, and we'll be also like minifying our images as well. So I've just copy pasted the image, and now let me go to my index.html, and here I will be adding some of the markup. So as you can see there is an header with a navigation with href, about, home, about, contact, and we have a section banner, and here I am linking my image, and here we have our h2 tag. Let me save this file, and now let me go to my main.scss. So I've added some styling, guys, in my SCSS file. So I'll just go through it. So header, I've made it fixed, And Z index, I've added a background opacity navigation. I've used a flexbox for this. And for you can check out my other videos for the flexboxes, how it works. And here I have a banner like section. I've added it like I've given a width of 70 vh image. I've used object fit and many other smaller things, guys. That's not much of a styling. So let me save this. And as you know, we have finished with the build function as well. Let me go to my package.json, and here I will write another script called build, which will call the function gulp build. Let me save this. And so let me open my let me open my browser. So this is what we have created using this. So let me also see if we are able to get a production file, production folder to go with. So I can run the following command to get the production code: npm run build. So in pipe image squash we have got an error. Let me just go and have a look. Let me go there under image squash, line 59, Imagemin. Oh, sorry. As you can see that it's gulp source actually, guys. So this was some error. So let me run gulp build once again. As you can see, guys, my Sass has been like converting my CSS file. The assets are being minified, and my one image has been reduced. As you can see, it's reduced by 33%. And then a dist folder has been created here. Under dist folder, I can see that there is a CSS folder that's been created with me.min.css. That's what we had specified in index.html. So here you can see my CSS being minified. Image, yeah, we have the image. Under JavaScript, we can see that it's been minified as we had only two this thing console logs. And in index, we have we have all the files. You can see, guys, that the build which we had commented out has been removed and it is replaced with the correct link, which is main.min.css. So thank you, guys, and see you in our next tutorial.